Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Trustees meeting for Grand Blanc Township on Thursday, May 9th. Mr. Guzak, could you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I will ask for an approval of the agenda for this evening.
So move the consent agenda and the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay. Motion second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we will move to citizen comments, and we'll start on the left side of the room here. If anybody wishes to speak. Okay, on the right side of the room. Okay, and we'll move to the back of the room. Mr. Ert, good evening.
Good evening, Ed, 721 Newport Road. Sorry for missing the meeting last night. Probably get a demerit for that. I want to talk about transparency in regards to Parks and Recreation. For years, I've been going on the website of Parks and Recs, and I've read their financial report for the month and their minutes. In 2019, there are none. They have been making no reports. And the reason I was tracking this was millage funding. I'm sure the board remembers me talking about the city's millage fund sitting at $600,000 sitting there, and they should give it back to the residents if they're not going to use it. I've been tracking that for years. As of November or December, they've only got $435,000 of that left. I'm assuming they're using it for their ice arena in the city. It was kind of nice when the city was able to take that $600,000 because they couldn't sit on it in their books because it just wouldn't look right to hold millage money for a decade. So they put it in Parks and Recs. But $600,000 is half of their annual budget. That money would make them look awful good to a bank. They're sitting on $600,000. They're financially stable. Everything's great. But I've seen this money start to dwindle down. And maybe that's one of their problems. The money was being masked there. I want to know if it's still there or if it's been transferred back to the city. Because that money could actually be used, and Kay Edson stood up here at a meeting and said that money could actually be used for Parks and Recs, that it didn't have to be used in the city. She stood right here and said it. So I think you ought to take a look at what's going on with that money. If they've got financial problems, we ought to take a look at it. Also, on that financial report, I went back because I didn't want to go too deep, but I did step back. October and November's report are identical. All they did was duplicate the same report. It's actually dated as October instead of November. So the transparency is really getting goofy there, and I'd like to know if that money is still there. And if it isn't, if it has been transferred back. It masks a problem with Parks and Recs. It was masking it, I believe, all the time. All I can do is make them assumptions. I don't have those records in front of me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ert. Okay, seeing no other citizen comment, we will move on to the approval of the minutes. And I know that I thought I saw a few amendments to those. No?
That was last night's minutes.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes either singly or as a whole.
I'll make the motion to approve all the minutes. Want me to? I could read them off. The April 9th Committee of the Whole, April 11th regular meeting, April 23rd regular meeting, and April 23rd executive session.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay. Motion
Discussion?
Support. Yes.
Yep.
Yes, Mr. Mansur.
Did the corrections on the attendance made in the couple of...
The attendance, yes, those were changed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Massey.
We talked about limiting the number of pages that the minutes should take. I went through the minutes and I determined that Madam Clerk Lane should limit the minutes to only 2 pages. And we don't have to mark them up. At that point, if you're limited to only 2 pages, if we decide to mark them up, it would be much easier. But if you got 3 and 4 pages then it makes it a little more complicated. So if we could limit the minutes to 2 pages,
Yeah.
just as a comment and suggestion.
Well, I know, I intended to get with you, and unfortunately, I was out for a week or two, but I still would like to sit down maybe with you and Mr. Lima to Miss Lane and go over just what exactly, because I think there probably is some more that we can eliminate. I'm not sure I'd want to limit it just to 2, because if it's an extra lengthy meeting, you might need to have more than that. But certainly we can take a look at limiting it. I've seen some minutes, and I know Mr. Lima has seen some from other municipalities that basically has the motion and the vote on it with very little description of what action was taken. But I think we can review those and see how they match up with ours, Mr.
Well,
Massey. Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Mhm.
normally, my experience has been, if someone has done something for 1,700 years and you try to change it, it creates a political problem. So what I'm saying is that I know Clerk Lane, I've heard her speak on this. It's not anything on your behalf because you've been doing the minutes for a long time. So I'm sort of exaggerating here, okay? Is that we paid all of the money for this recording video. So why should we spend a lot more time on the minutes when the recording video capture the most important part of our meeting? That's the way I see it. Okay.
Let's, if you're not opposed, let's plan a meeting for you and I and Mr. Limita and maybe even Mr. Laddie and Miss Lane to get together and talk about minutes specifically and go through them and just have a discussion. Would that be okay?
That would be nice if we had the attorney there if he's available on his schedule.
Okay. Let's make that happen. Maybe after the meeting, let's plan a time to get together in the next week.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so there's motion seconded, some discussion. Ready for the vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have the consent agenda items that have been already approved. Operational issues. The board will consider a resolution to install a street light at the intersection of Dort Highway and the Township Campus Service Drive.
So
Yeah.
moved, Mr. Chair, for the safety
Okay.
of the public.
Second.
Okay, it's been supported, seconded. Any further discussion? We talked a little bit about it last night, especially with the activity that we have going on. I think that a street light would be very helpful there. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I think you need a resolution.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
Ms.
right.
Lane?
I'm sorry.
That's right.
Mr. Mansour,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Atkins.
Yes.
Mr. Guzak.
Yes.
Mr. Massey.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
The next item, the board will consider a resolution to install a street light at the corner of Hill Road and Grove Street for a similar type situation with an intersection. And we discussed this briefly last night as well. Any discussion? Is there anybody want to support that motion? Or
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Do you have a question, Mr. Atkins?
Yeah, just a question on maybe Mr. Lehman, and not to put him on the spot, could answer this, but I was reading an interesting article about streetlights in Detroit and a company they selected for LEDs. Are we moving in the direction of LEDs? Maybe we already have, and is that something that has been discussed internally of warranty or?
Just prior to you coming on the board, we did an extensive review. We actually had some meetings with some outside consultants, even took a look at our current streetlight program, and we did the conversion to LEDs. Everything new we're putting in, we have converted those old Cobra head lights to LEDs that we're responsible for. So we're trying to make that conversion throughout, because I can't remember the payback now, and maybe Supervisor Bennett, if you recall what
Yeah.
that conversation was, but
Yeah,
it was-
I don't recall the specifics, but we looked into it in depth, and right
Okay.
now it just pays to have consumers do it.
All right.
And
Thanks.
in these cases, it's fairly inexpensive because the pole is there and the power is there. It gets more expensive when there isn't either of those items available. So there was a motion that was,
Yes, there's
okay,
support.
it's a resolution. So.
Yes. Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Myself, yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Item C, the board will consider a motion to approve a quote from Zito Construction for $34,440 for water infrastructure work in connection to the Hill Road Rehabilitation Project, and authorize Township Superintendent to execute all related contracts and documents.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Massey.
Support.
Motion supported for the public, and Mr. Atkins, we discussed this last night at the meeting, Committee of the Whole, and it's basically some work that is in conjunction with the Hill Road rehabilitation that at the last minute we became aware of through some engineering issues, and so it's best that we take care of this problem right now while we have all the workers out there, Zito, construction, what have you. So there's a motion and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item E, the board will consider a motion to adopt the revised 2019 DPW fee schedule, which is effective immediately. Did I miss something?
Yeah.
Okay,
Budget for-
I'm sorry. Item D, the board will consider a motion to approve an initial budget of $100,000, and I think we've changed that to $120,000.
Yeah.
Okay. $120,000 for renovations to Fire Station 2 and number 3 to accommodate full-time firefighters, and authorize Township Superintendent to approve and execute quotes and estimates. We discussed this. Okay, motion?
Second.
Supported? Seconded. And we actually took a tour, Mr. Atkins, of the area, or the rest of the board did it in terms, and we'll be glad to show you the area too, but we're under a time crunch to get this done, and so we're gonna move quickly on it, but do the work well and make sure that we have good quotes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we'll get to item E. The board will consider a motion to adopt the revised 2019 DPW fee schedule, which is effective immediately. Basically, I think it was pretty well described in the packet that the issue is with hydrant meters, and basically we need a deposit on those, so if they go missing, I believe they're, several $1,000s, and then also to make sure we get paid for the water, we're going to ask for a check. So that's the intention there. So is there a motion and support on that?
Yes, so moved.
Okay.
Support.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Future agenda items, I'm not sure there are any right now, but I know we are going to be talking about the policies here coming up in the next few meetings. I know we've set that aside for time being, but we haven't forgot it. And so I know Mr. Lehman has been putting together the policies from the various board members that may have submitted them, or doing some research on that. So what will happen with that is they'll be assembled, and we'll get a copy and get some time to review those, and then make suggestions on any changes or any additional policies that we think might be missing. Ms. Lane?
I just wanted to let the board know that we have scheduled a road committee meeting next week in order to discuss all the roads that have come in with questions about having them repaved.
Right.
And that consists of Mr. Bennett, Mr. Massey, and myself.
Mr. Massey? That's you on it.
Okay, Mr. Mansour, anything with regard to Planning Commission?
So, two things, Supervisor Bennett. First, with respect to the Planning Commission, we are fully engaged in starting the master plan. The consultant met with the steering committee of the steering committee ahead of the May 2nd Planning Commission. The steering committee consists of a couple of people from the Planning Commission plus some residents. So that was good. The main topic of the meeting was to really start to solidify the survey questions and the survey approach for the public engagement part of it. So that's coming along. I think that's going to be finalized by the next time we meet in a month here. So that we got off to a good start there. Then in the planning committee, or excuse me, in the planning commission, we approved a home to hotel site review. That'll be coming this way as well. It's an exciting, very nice looking building that's going to go up just south of the Taco Bell on Holly Road and Cook. And it's amazing what you can do with that little slice of land there. But they really got an area where they've unified 3 buildings. Interestingly enough, each one of them is a different brand. So depending on who you happen to have your hotel miles with, you can kind of pick the Marriott, or you can pick the Hilton, or you can pick the Quality, and of course, Holiday Inn Express is on the other side there. But anyway, it's a really exciting, and I think when they get it all together, they have really nice plans for landscaping, and it's going to be very attractive for the community. I think, as we have more events here, like softball, baseball, Ally, and things, I think that they've really hit a sweet spot in terms of being at the right place, at the right time with hotel rooms. So that's it. I just want to say a couple words about the Metro Alliance meeting. That was held February 17th. We covered a number of the typical items here, but just want to, again, if the township is interested in trail counts, that they have monitors that are available. We can rent those for a 2-week period. They have started to do an interactive visual mapping of regional trails. And it's pretty interesting because as you go through there, the bicentennial bike paths happen to be shown on there, Genesis Hospital pathways, and also along Grand Blanc Road. So it's nice that we're getting some attention there. So
What is that, Al? I didn't quite understand what that is.
What they've done is they've begun to put together a interactive visual mapping of regional trails. So you can go in there and you can kind of look in the site about where trails are located. So that's pretty interesting. Just 2 more things here. There is a beginning work on a 2020 Unified Work Program set of not actions, but a set of projects. So we have an opportunity to make some suggestions if we desire there. And then finally, just want to point out that they did distribute the Genesee County Recycle Day event schedule. So the first one's going to be held June 8th at Fenton High School, as well as the Court Street Flint Water Service Center. The second one's going to be held October 12th at Clio. And then there are some midweek events that are in the city of Flint. So I have that information if you'd like to have it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Mansour. With that, Mr. Atkins, anything that you'd like to mention with regard? I know you've had a busy schedule with Parks and Rec, and we talked about it in your absence a little bit last night, but maybe you want to share your perspective for the public.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Chair, a reminder, I think they were calling for an executive session.
Oh, yeah. No, I haven't forgotten about that.
And not to do it.
Yeah, nope, I haven't forgotten about that. But
Well, I still want to publicly report out to this meeting for it. All right, so we had a Parks and Rec meeting this week, and we again talked about our concerns, ongoing discussions of the liabilities, and some of the things we see going forward with how the township is involved in the employment issues and financial issues. So we did make a proposal that was rejected, and that proposal was for the township to assume the administrative financial oversight as well as employment obligations. That was rejected, and pretty much we're back at a little bit of a standstill there in terms of a path forward. There are some concerns financially, where they stand and how they're going to probably pay bills or potentially make payroll here pretty soon. So those are kind of ongoing discussions.
Okay, I appreciate, I know Mr. Thomas was. Sure.
Two other things. We did make some progress though in terms of making sure that some people are in the right positions to make sure that programming is managed and looked after. So Carol did get appointed to an interim director role, as well as Senya Limita to the assistant role. So that'll be good. I think that they have a real good handle on programming. I'm not too worried in that regard, but we really need to get the liability portion of this behind us. It's just kind of weighing us down. We just need to do the right thing, so.
Okay. Thank you to you, Mr. Thomas, for your time, with the board, and I know both of you put in some time with their meetings and what have you, so. And we'll be talking, as Ms. Lane said, in our executive session on a few things with regard to negotiation on that. Mr. Massey, anything with regard to Fire Commission?
No.
Okay. Thanks. Let's see, I don't think we've had any police committee meetings yet. Mr. Guzak, anything to report?
No.
Ms. Lane, anything?
We had 9.6% of our 28,000 voters participate Tuesday in our election, so that's less than 10%. We had a few people come in and register to vote and vote the day of election, and that went smoothly. The election was approved, but I certainly hope that people become more interested in voting in all elections.
Has the new equipment done anything to speed up how quickly the results is published, or no?
That works fine. We didn't have a problem with it this year.
But has it sped it up at all, or not
Well,
really?
because you get the report from the machines, but
Right.
yesterday was when the county board meets and certifies the election, and it's all certified, but it was only one issue, so.
Okay.
Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
If I could ask a question. How much did the election cost the township? Or, wait, no, I shouldn't say it. How much are we charging the schools?
We haven't finished getting all of the payroll and all of the expenses for the township. I can tell you that because of the changes in Proposal 18.3 from last November, the schools are going to have additional costs from the Village of Holly, because the clerk, even though we were handling their 15 voters, she had to keep her office open for 8 hours on the weekend and from 7 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night to allow for anybody to come into her office to register to vote and vote on the first time. And for Atlas Township, they decided, because they had to be open on the weekend and all day, that they opened up, instead of us doing it, they opened up their offices and held their own election over there. So there's going to be additional cost to anybody like a school district that expands beyond one, plus whatever the costs are going to be from Genesee County. So it's, I know, going to be more than $50,000 at least. But I will give you an exact count
from the
when we
township.
do it.
Thank you very much.
50,000?
No.
Because you have county,
Township's 32.
Atlas, Holly Township, Burton, and Mundy Township that they have to pay for,
In addition to Grand
in
Blanc.
addition to Grand Blanc Township and Grand Blanc City. So it's a substantial
Yeah, but
cost, and everybody is going to be putting their cost into the county.
you don't have an approximate figure for.
No, we
when you
haven't
get this
worked
to-
on that yet. We're getting our payroll together. We were able, with one issue, to be out of here on Tuesday night at 10:30. So that's the first time we've ever done that.
Usually much later.
Well, 3:30 a.m. the next morning is a little bit later. And that's what it was in August and November with the long election.
Right, but I meant with regard to an election like this, where it's just basically a school village.
Everything went smooth because we consolidated our elections, and schools were not open at 6 o'clock, so we had to call a few people to get them open. But
Mr. Massey?
Yes, my question to Clerk Lane. Who does the calculation for the cost?
Well, I do it for here. We put together all of our costs for our election workers, the time for any of the other people that we had to come in, and then we submit it to Genesee County. Genesee County gets all the costs and submits it to the individual communities like Thetford Township and Grand Blanc schools, and they wait for Grand Blanc schools and to pay, and then we get reimbursed our costs.
Our finance department, though, would be involved in that too, right?
Well,
I
they
mean,
have
in
to give
terms
us
of-
some of the costs when they get the payroll done.
Okay.
What would you say, Mr. Chair?
I was just thinking that our finance department, I know Miss Lane probably submits, you know, the hours and what have you to HR, and I would guess that she receives the numbers, I would guess, from our finance department.
Right.
And reports them, but it's probably our finance that just goes over everything, to make sure that everything's included,
Oh, okay.
so. Okay, Mr. Laddie, anything?
Just the closed session.
Okay, Mr. Lemata?
One thing I have for you, I got an email from the city manager this week, and if you guys recall, we had when Cooper had graciously agreed to bring his team over and go through McFarland Library to take a look and give us that 5-year maintenance plan. One of the high priority items was to repair the library's roof. They had estimated in that plan at $160,000. Apparently the city sent their engineer, Fleisen Van de Brink, over there, and they've also estimated it at $160,000. The city manager is applying for a grant from the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs for a capital improvement matching grant for libraries. She did last night ask the city council for a letter of support for $80,000 request for the grant, and she's asking the board if you would consider providing a letter of support for the same request. She does need it by May 24th to attach it to the grant request. And so if the board was so inclined to want to approve a letter of support for that, I can put something together and have Supervisor Bennett send it forward to the city to accompany that grant request.
Mr. Massey? Mr. Massey had his hand
Yeah.
up.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we get our own estimate?
Sure, I guess anybody can go and get an estimate. We had it done by, when Cooper had volunteered to provide that
Right.
for the community at no charge. I don't know if the city had to pay their engineers or not, but I guess they wanted to verify the estimate that we received last month.
I'm thinking aloud here, that if it's 120,000, we need estimates. That's the way I would go forward.
So let me just clarify, because I'm kind of confused. So what was the timeline, Mr. Lehman, in terms of Mr. Cooper, when Cooper?
They had done theirs earlier this year, and I don't remember when we were over there, but we
November
received that
7th.
and went to the board probably at the beginning
Yeah,
of April or
yeah.
end of March or whatever, and they had put all their estimates together of what they thought it was, and they used their architects and engineers,
Right.
Kevin Johnson from Johnson and Rhodes and John Aslin from Aslin Architects. And they had it estimated 160, and apparently, according to this email that I got, the city had their engineer go over and take a look at it as well. So we have two different firms have looked at it, both come up with the same $160,000
All
estimate.
right, so they're both pretty much
Yeah, it's the exact
similar
same
then.
number.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
I mean, Mr. Chair, I didn't get a clear answer. Do we have an estimate?
We had Mr. Cooper's firm look at it, and his estimate was similar to what the city's estimate was, 160,000.
Right.
So we've had that done. We asked, Mr. Cooper serves on our DDA as a property management company, what have you, and so we asked his company beginning of the year to go through the building and take a look at all the upgrades that may need to happen over the next year or two, or next several years. And that was included. I just want to make sure that our estimate was, in
Similar.
line with what the city's number
They're
was.
exactly the same, and again, we're not looking, she's not asking to award a bid, that, so let's go out, it would have to go out and be bid and everything. This is just to apply for the grant from the Michigan Council
Right.
of Arts and Cultural Affairs.
So actual having the work done will be that'll come before this board, but right now we're just looking at being able to apply for a grant and give a letter of support saying we'll go along with, looking for a grant. Ms. Lane?
Mr. Chair, the McFarland Library Board concurred with the reports that the roof was the first priority, and I would be very glad to make a motion that the township support the city's efforts to apply for a grant and hopefully be successful to assist in that project.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Mr. Massey?
I'm going back to a few months ago, 2018. If my memory serves me correctly, we did some additional, put carpet down, right?
Carpeting.
Yeah,
Yep.
carpeting down. So at that time, if my memory served me correctly, the roof was never mentioned. And the reason I say the roof was never mentioned, I mean, a roof just doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't go bad overnight. So I'm trying to understand how did all of this
Well, partly
suddenly come
yeah.
about.
And that's a good question. I think, one of the things that happened, Mr. Massey, is that, the carpeting came to our board and we kind of said to ourselves, well, hey, what else needs to be done over there? It's similar to, several years ago when we looked at vehicles, it was like, hey, we were approving a new vehicle for fire 1 month, or not for fire, for police, every other month. It's like, hey, let's put together a plan of vehicle replacement. And I think what we said is, let's do the same thing for the library. Let's put together a plan of what is it that this thing's going to need over the next 5 years. It helps Mr. Lemito with budgeting so that he knows, hey, what are we committing to here over the next several years, and is this something we want to actually fund? So I think what it was is that carpeting kind of was a stimulus to us to say, let's get with the library people and say, let's ask Mr. Cooper to go through it for us and just to tell us, are we throwing money down a hole or what?
I understand that, but I got some feedback from the community. It's
Okay.
very disturbing. The feedback I got was that the roof has been leaking for some time.
Okay.
That's what I heard through the
Sure.
grapevine.
That I couldn't tell you, but Miss Lane's had her hand up, and then I'll get to you, Mr. Thomas. Miss Lane?
All right, the roof has been checked out every spring, and when it's a rubberized roof of some sort, they fix the repairs. And yes, because of lack of funding and lack of maybe complete communication between the city, the township, and the library McFarland board, I was sent there to say what's going on. And because of the reports that we got from Mr. Cooper, who identified the roof as being priority number one, the McFarland Library Board agreeing, and now when we have a projected estimate of $160,000, the city manager has agreed to apply for a grant for half the cost. And she simply needs our support as a board, as 50-50 owner of the building, to pursue that grant and save the community significant amount of money if she can acquire the grant.
Mr. Thomas?
I spoke with Vice President Mark Kilmer about this, and
The library board, GDS?
the
McFarland Library
Vice President. I've been spending a fair amount of time over at the library, redoing the kitchen and everything else at no cost to McFarland. But anyways, what's going on with the roof, Trustee Massey, is the flashings have shrunk, and instead of repairing it, and it is leaking, but instead of repairing it, they have to replace the flashings. Kind of interesting thing though, with the architect, John Aslan, that works with Kevin Johnson from Rhodes and Johnson and Wynn Cooper with Cooper Realty, the city actually had Aslan, John, go and he did the roof for them too. So that's why the numbers are the same, because the same architect did it. So I mean, the city actually used our suggestion and used our architect.
Okay. Mr. Atkins?
I'm so voting no.
by signing on for this grant letter, what does the township get out of it? Does the amount of the grant go up?
No, anytime you're doing those grants, you always get points in the grant total when you have, especially when it's a joint operation like McFarland Library, for community support. Anyone who lends support, you include those letters, and it does improve your chances of securing the grant.
Okay.
We've even done that on grants for the trails, that if Consumers Energy jumps into it, you know, Genesis, whoever, we can jump in. It helps give us more points. Mr. Mansour?
So if I'm hearing this right, our two choices are, I'm just my calculator out here, two choices are, we either go without a grant and our 60/40 portion's about $96,000. Or if we have the grant, then our 60, it's the whatever half, so it's 80,000 times point, so it's about
Right.
48,000.
Right.
So we're trying to save ourselves $50,000 by supporting this,
Right.
hopefully, if they're successful. Is that how it's gonna work?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm taking it you would be in favor of it, Mr. Mansour?
What's that?
Yeah,
I'm
Well, we
saying-
need a support for the motion.
I'll support it.
No way.
Thank you.
But Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'd like to say something, probably just me.
okay.
It seems like every time we take a deep dive into something, we find more problems than have ever been exposed. I mean, when does all of this come to an end?
Well, I think, you know, we're doing them one by one. So I think, you know, we've got the fire commission that we're working our way through that one right now. With Parks and Rec, we're gonna, you know, do a little bit more work tonight on that and get that on its way. And then we, you know, the library, I think, you know, right now we've got a group of dedicated folks, just like we did with fire and Parks and Rec. I really think the main issue with the library is mainly the physical plant. The operations are taken care of by the Genesee District Library. So with regard to personnel issues, finances, any of those types of things, those are not in our court. That's the Genesee District Library Board that takes care of that, and I trust that, you know, that board's doing a good job. And so anyways, the main issue, I think, with regard to McFarland is basically just the physical plant itself. And, you know, that's why I think we had Wynn Cooper Properties go through the building just so we can get a handle on it. And I think what we'll need to take a deeper dive on with that is just kind of look at what that plan is that Mr. Cooper put together for us. I know everybody received a copy of it, but we need to take a look at it and say, hey, you know, maybe even before we, you know, actually do the roof, but take another look at it and just say, hey, you know, over the next 5 years, how much, I forget what the total was that they're estimating that it would cost to fix that building, and just see, you know, if it makes sense to us to do all those things or what the options are. But I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying that I think our liability there is limited to basically the physical plant itself, and I think we're addressing that.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Mr. Chair? Is the library too small for the community?
That's a good question that we should probably dive into and just ask what do we need for the library, and what does, you know, what kind of surveying we've done. And I don't know if the master plan looks at any of that, or, you know, where that assessment comes from, but I'm not prepared to answer that question. And I'm not sure the Genesee District Library is, or if McFarland Board is. It's a good question, though.
Because I did some research, and what I discovered was that on any given day you can have at least 14,000 people going into that building.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a good thing they added that addition to it.
Yeah.
We just recently had that, so it's nice.
Mr. Adkins.
Just one more question about the request for the grant. Who controls the money, and what is the exact language in it of how the funds would be applied?
I don't know, you know, she's gonna apply for it. We know, if the money comes in, that it's gonna be applied towards McFarland Library. You can't accept the money and not use it for the McFarland Library.
Right.
There was nothing in here about the 60-40 split, about the remaining $80,000. It's purely a request for support, a letter of support for having them go after the grant.
So are you wanting to make sure that the 60-40 split stays in place, Mr. Atkins?
Well, I don't know. I'm not opposed to a letter in support, but I just would somehow like to make sure that that money is, earmarked, and the purpose of doing that is for the roof, and, there's not some sort of, we get entangled in some sort of misinterpretation of where the money is and how it's being held and what it's being used for and when it's being used. And
It's a pretty specific grant, Mr. Lemata, you think? Or
Yeah,
is it-
I mean, anytime you fill one of these out, you're very specific about exactly what it's going to be used for, and then there's qualifications on that. I mean, you have to verify that you actually used the money for exactly what you said, or there's consequences. And including you'd have to repay back the money.
But it's a good question. I think, the 60-40 split is something we want to make sure it doesn't go towards the 40 and not towards
We should table this.
evenly.
For what it's worth, I asked the city manager last night, and she said, the remaining balance would be on the
Right.
okay.
The remaining balance.
We need to-
After they
Okay.
get the grant, whatever's left is gonna 60-40, right?
Okay.
We need to table this.
Well, probably we just need to confirm that when we send,
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Guzek had his hand up and then Mr.
Yeah,
Guzek.
Mr. Lehman, usually on these grants, the 50/50 has to be paid by us first before they're gonna kick theirs in, right? And, I mean, there's always controls on the money. I know there's a question about that, and I know there's really strict controls on all grants, and normally, we've got a lot of grants, like our SWIFT grant, we have to pay our money, then we reimburse and get it back. So,
No, in these grants, it's not that much different than the M&RTF grants that we said that we would back. You're basically saying in this one that it's a matching grant, so we're agreeing that $80,000 will be paid by the township and city
Right.
in order to get the $80,000 grant from the MCACA.
Right.
So there's no money out of pocket.
Okay.
Question would come, if this grant is successful, hallelujah, then we can move forward, we can bid the project, we can decide on what the funding formula
Right.
would be and have that down. If we couldn't agree on what the funding formula would be to repay the remaining, then you just wouldn't accept the grant would go back to MCACA.
and you lose all the
Still
money.
making a commitment.
Mr. Massey and then Mr. Thomas.
yes, I'd like to, as a record, make a correction. I said 14,000 per day. It's 1,400.
Okay,
Right.
1,400.
Yeah, 1,400.
All right. I was gonna set up a hot dog stand out front if it was 14,000.
Yeah, no, but 1,400.
Did Mr. Atkins or Mr. Thomas?
Call the question, please.
Just looking to maximize the potential for the grant, would we be better off to apply for our own grant through that same offering?
It's not gonna cover more than 80,000, so once the application's going in, whether we submit it or the city submits it, isn't gonna make any difference. We can't offset the remainder, they're not gonna do more than half.
Okay.
Mr. Thomas?
I think this is a really good thing, and I think we'd be silly not to do it. I would like to thank the city manager, Wendy, for actually going above and beyond and including this to us, and I'd like to call for the question.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Well,
Yeah,
it's already
there's a
been-
motion and
And
support,
support?
Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, does this need to be a resolution or no? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? What else, Mr. Lemata?
That's it. I believe Mr. Laddie has already alerted to the fact that he has some information he would like to go over with you in an executive session if you
Right.
guys would be so inclined.
One thing before we do that, we have this visioning summit that I'm serve on the steering committee. Basically what it is Genesee County, the County Board of Commissioners, the Greater Genesee Flint Chamber, and the City of Flint actually along with a number of foundations, are funding this effort. But the idea is to put together kind of a unified vision amongst all the municipalities throughout the county as to how do we create an economic vitality here in the county. You know, that we looked at, you know, over the past 10, 15 years, there's been about 50 different studies that have been done by all different organizations, what have you. But part of the idea is to bring together people from every part of the county to talk about what we think needs to be part of that vision and what we need to bring our county together. Obviously, you know, we can't exist separate from everybody else and vice versa. So, anyways, that's coming up on May 14th. It's going to be at Baker College. They're going to have pizza or whatever, but the bottom line is they need to have input from every demographic and every corner of the county.
I'll go with you.
So, anyways, appreciate it if you guys could attend.
This would be cool.
Okay, with that, somebody make a motion. Mr. Laddie, what will this
The
need
motion
be
will
for?
be to consider a written attorney's opinion.
But one that can walk.
Is there,
I make a motion for us to go into
Second.
executive session. Yeah.
okay, there's motion support.
I didn't say that out loud.
Okay. What's that?
Second.
It's already
Okay,
second.
all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's
Any
a roll
opposed?
call.
Roll call, Ms. Lean?
Yes. Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Mr. Mansour? Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Myself, yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.